standing up for college football, or is he just looking for excuses for Clemson's slide from national championship team to mediocrity? Find out next on Scarbo Knows. We are hot as fire here in the Deep South as we get ready for another deep freeze weekend coming straight ahead. But Dabo Swinney's not cold. He is hot under the collar. And man, did he go off on Pete Golding, on Ole Miss, on the subject of tampering. And he brought receipts. Lots and lots of receipts. And we're going to get into the hottest issue in college football. Did Dabo do the right thing? Did Ole Miss do the wrong thing? Or is this all much ado about nothing? We're going to find out today on Scarbo Knows. Hello, everyone. I am Kevin Scarbinsky, a.k.a. Scarbo. We appreciate you joining us here on the Sidelines.live network with executive producer extraordinaire Brendan Martin. Make sure you check out all the great shows on the network. All day long, every day, good stuff upon good stuff. Make sure you check them all out on the Sidelines.live network. And thank you to our sponsor, Money Management Services, the Rice family. They are Birmingham's financial services firm. They've been in business since 1992. Good friends of mine. They'll take great care of you, whatever your financial services needs. There you see the QR code on the screen. Look them up, reach out, and then we'll hear more from them later in the show. I told you never to call me here. Stop it. And then you can, of course, follow me on X, or if you prefer Twitter. A lot of spirited conversations going on there about the subject we're going to talk about today, about Charles Bediako at Alabama, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we've got to get off and go off on the same subject that set off Dabo Swinney. And man, we've heard Dabo be passionate before. We've heard him express his deep feelings about a lot of issues affecting Clemson, affecting college football in general. But I don't know that we've ever heard him or any other coach be as real and raw on a sensitive subject as we heard him a week ago. That was Friday, January 16th, January 23rd, I'm sorry. Almost a week ago, and he is not happy and he's not having it. So we've got to get into this whole subject of tampering, what it means. Is this just the way college football is conducted in the year 2026? Is Dabo whining and crying because he lost a player and he can't keep up and the game has passed him by? I have thoughts on all of these subjects. But first of all, we have to talk about the player at the center of the controversy, because I'll bet many of you had never heard of him before this all came to light. His name is Luke Ferrelli. Who is Luke Ferrelli, you ask? I'm glad you asked. He is a 6'3", 230-pound inside linebacker from San Diego, originally signed with Cal. And this past season, he was I think he redshirted the year. And then this past season for the Bears, he was the 2025 ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year. There you see on the left side of the screen his Cal bio, which, by the way, is still up. I'm not sure why. But he entered the transfer portal and for a minute transferred to Clemson. And there you see on the right side of the screen his Clemson bio, which is in a hilarious twist. There are no details there other than you see the circled line. Click here for Luke Ferrelli's timeline at Clemson. And what you'll find if you click on that link is Dabo Swinney's press conference accusing Pete Golding and Ole Miss of cheating to get Luke Ferrelli from Clemson to Oxford. So let's look at the timeline now. We're going to run through the basics of this because I think it's important. Many of you have already heard something about this story, but when we're dealing with these kind of serious allegations and accusations, it's important that we stick to the facts as much as possible before we form our opinions. And I have strong opinions on this, as I do on most things in the sports world. All right, here's the timeline, basically. And we're not going to do times and dates. This is not a court of law. This is not an opening statement. I am not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV, although I like to think I spent time in a former life as a litigator. Luke Ferrelli entered the transfer portal this year from Cal. He visited, I'm not sure if he visited anywhere else, but I know, at least we know thanks to Dabo Swinney, that he visited Ole Miss. And then right after his Ole Miss visit, he went to Clemson. And by the way, according to Dabo, the father of Luke Ferrelli, when they were in Clemson, told Dabo they didn't really have a good time on their Ole Miss visit. It was very disorganized. The building was disorganized. The visit was disorganized. And that was not the case when he went to Clemson. So apparently the Ferrellis were happy enough with the situation at Clemson that after he was there, well, first he committed while he was there, the 2 days or so that he spent on campus. And then he signed a financial aid agreement to play football in the upcoming season with Clemson. And he was so committed to that decision, it appears, beyond the signature on a contract. He rented an apartment. He bought a car. He started classes, started workouts with his would-be, newbie Clemson teammates. And then something went awry. He re-entered the transfer portal right at the very end, which was Friday the 16th, a couple of weeks ago. And lo and behold, he transferred to Ole Miss. Now, that alone is so 2026. It's so college football in the NIL transfer portal era that the story would not have raised many eyebrows if that was all there were to it. However, there is a rest of the story. And in the rest of the story, we get the allegations on what happened to steer Luke Ferrelli from Clemson to Ole Miss. Let's look at those allegations as they were laid out by Dabo Swinney, and these are pretty damning. If true, again, we have to say this for legal reasons, for reasons of fairness, these are allegations. They are not proven facts yet. Ole Miss, according to Dabo, kept recruiting Ferrelli after he signed with Clemson. Ole Miss doubled its offer to Ferrelli after he signed with Clemson. In other words, not only did they double the money, they doubled the years, from 1 year to 2 years, from $1 million to $2 million. I'm not sure he's worth that. I don't know if he's worth that, but apparently Ole Miss thought so, according to Dabo. And then this may be the most egregious accusations of all. Accusation, singular, of all. Ole Miss coach Pete Golding, according to Dabo, texted Ferrelli while Ferrelli was in class at Clemson. And the text said, "I know you're signed. What's the buyout?" If that is true, Pete Golding's got some splaining to do. And after Ferrelli allegedly told Ole Miss he was happy with his decision, he wanted to stay at Clemson, Ole Miss persisted. They kept recruiting him. Even after Clemson's general manager reached out to the Ole Miss general manager, told him they knew what was going on behind the scenes. They knew Ole Miss was still recruiting Ferrelli, and they told Ole Miss to stop. And if they didn't stop, they were going to turn him into the NCAA. As Dabo put it, they were going to give him some grace initially. But Ole Miss didn't back down. And Ferrelli's agent, now this is another part of the sleazy aspect of college football in the year 2026. Not that he has an agent. Every player deserves representation. Don't get it twisted. These guys need someone in the know, someone with experience who can guide them through the ins and outs of contracts. Because I imagine most people walking around, most adults, are not well versed in contract language. And you don't want to be taken advantage of, especially if you're an 18, 19, 20-year-old college athlete. So nothing wrong with Ferrelli having an agent. However, if this is true, and this, again, is another allegation from Dabo Swinney, Ferrelli's agent told Clemson that he would turn over incriminating evidence against Ole Miss of tampering, wait for it, if Clemson doubled its offer to Ferrelli. And Clemson, as you can imagine, said, "No, we're not doing that. Are you kidding? You're trying." It sounds, I'm not a lawyer again, but that sounds a little bit like extortion. I'll do this for you if you do this for me or my clients. Yikes, if that is true. Okay, those are the allegations. And these allegations all came to light at a press conference, like I said, a week ago, Friday, January 23rd, at Clemson University. Dabo Swinney took the stage, and here is just a small snippet of what he said.
Like, there's tampering, and then there's blatant tampering. You know, tampering 101 is when you're talking to kids who aren't in the portal. Tampering 201 is when you've already negotiated the deal with the kids not in the portal. Tampering 301 is when you got a kid who's gone in the portal, signed somewhere, moved there, gone to classes, and you're texting them while they're in class. That's like a whole nother level of tampering. And it's
Now, I don't know if this was Dabo's intention, but that is a brilliant bit of loitering by a non-lawyer, a brilliant bit of reasoning by a football coach to present this in academic terms, to essentially say this is upperclassman level tampering. This isn't freshman level tampering. This isn't sophomore level tampering. This is junior and senior level tampering, what he says Ole Miss did. And it was a just brilliant breakdown of different things that are happening today, that have happened over the last month since transfer portal opened and closed. And of course, you could still sign guys that were in the portal. No one can additionally add their name to the portal now at this point, now that it's closed. But there are a lot of people in the portal that have not yet found a new home. And many of them won't find a new home to play college football, sadly, because they made a bad decision or they got bad advice or both. But that was just a taste of Dabo's press conference. Now, if you know Dabo Swinney, and if you've known him as long as I have, and full disclosure, obviously Dabo is from Pelham, Alabama, which is about 45 minutes or so from where I sit. I've known Dabo since he was a player at Alabama, and then he was an assistant coach there, and then he got out of the football business, and then Gene Stallings put him back in the football business as an assistant, for which he is eternally grateful. And then Tommy Bowden put him on his Clemson staff. And then Dabo got the opportunity of a lifetime when they were going to fire Tommy Bowden, and they made Dabo, first of all, the interim head coach, and then they made him the full-time head coach. And that's one of the most brilliant hires in the history of college football, because a man who had never even been a coordinator became what he is now, a surefire Hall of Famer. And like I said, Dabo has never been one to be shy about expressing his feelings. He does wear his heart on his sleeve. It rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And I know through the years, people have questioned whether he was sincere, whether he was playing a character or a role, whether he was a hypocrite, putting on one face in public while acting another way in private. And I can tell you this, some of the people that I know and respect the most in the profession, like Bill Clark, former UAB coach, they fully believe in Dabo Swinney. They know what kind of person Dabo Swinney is. I believe I know what kind of person he is. And I think Dabo is real, and he's genuine, and he means what he says. I saw him speak to a room at a coaching clinic here in Birmingham, a bunch of high school coaches from around the Southeast. And it was an unbelievable hour or so of him sharing stories, giving advice, and every coach in that room hanging on his every word. It was a masterful performance, but it was easy because he spoke from the heart. That's who Dabo is. And if you don't believe it, then you're a little too cynical for my taste. That's just who he is. And so for him to do what he did, and this was a 19-minute soliloquy. The Clemson AD sat next to him at that press conference and then took over when Dabo was finished. But Dabo went on for 19 minutes. He made an incredible number of salient points. He talked about a league with actual rules like the NFL about tampering, that you can't sign a contract with the Cleveland Browns and then a week later get a better offer from the Miami Dolphins and say, see you guys. I'm heading to South Beach, taking my talents to South Beach. No, because there are rules against it. And if you break those rules, you lose draft choices, you get fined. Maybe coaches get suspended. I'm not sure about that part, but I do know there are fines and draft penalties that do attach to valid tampering allegations. So Dabo laid it out in a way that I don't think we've ever heard a coach do. Point by point, detail by detail. He used dates. He used times. The time that Pete Golding allegedly texted Luke Ferrelli while Ferrelli was in class at Clemson. If that isn't the exhibit A of what tampering is, there is no tampering. That is as low as it goes from a professional integrity standpoint. And of course, as you can imagine, over the last week, since Dabo went off publicly, there has been a firestorm of reaction. Everybody who's anybody has had an opinion on what Dabo said, what he did, and how he said it, and how he did it. Let's look at some of the backlash. Some of it applauding Dabo, some of it castigating him. The most important aspect of this, and this was reported by Grace Rayner of The Athletic, as you can see the upper left of the screen, NCAA confirms it is looking into Dabo Swinney's tampering accusations against Ole Miss. That is extraordinary because the NCAA generally doesn't say word one about any ongoing or potential cases. But they confirmed to the Athletic looking into those accusations against Ole Miss. That's pretty powerful stuff. People like Urban Meyer have offered their opinion. He sided with Dabo Swinney. Now, Dabo in his press conference said this is not going to be a 3-year NCAA case or a 3-month NCAA case. He said it might take 3 days. Urban suggested this is an open and shut case that could be closed by the NCAA in 1 day. He said Dabo absolutely was correct and did the right thing in going public with these accusations. Because if this is allowed to stand, if this rule that the NCAA has against tampering, which, by the way, is not the strongest rule in the rule book, I believe it's only a level 2 allegation, so not the most serious that they can penalize you for if they're still in the business of penalizing schools. But Urban was all in on what Dabo did. And then John Canzano, longtime journalist on the West Coast, now he is, not unlike me, he's independent. He put out a news story in the last 24 hours that there's a new wrinkle to the Ole Miss Clemson NCAA tampering probe. And John reported, based on his sources, that Fresno State has a wide receiver that Fresno State believed Ole Miss tampered with as well. And that Fresno State has shared this information with the NCAA. Not looking good for Ole Miss. And then, and I've known Matt Hayes a long time. He's covered college football for decades and decades. He writes a provocative column for USA Today on that subject. And I think he was misunderstood. The headline says Dabo Swinney learns hard lesson. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Now, that was practically the SEC motto long before It Just Means More came along. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. But if that's the ethos that we're going to operate under, we have lost the plot. And again, you have to read the entire column. And I can say this as a longtime columnist, many, many, many times, people will read a headline or they'll read a tweet linking to a column, and they'll think the column says one thing, and it doesn't actually say that. Matt's not actually advocating that we put the rule book in the wood chipper and let anything go. But he is, and does in the column, suggesting that Dabo is frustrated, that the game has passed him by somewhat. And here he gets into the transfer portal. The thing that people have accused Dabo of is being old school, of being hard-headed, of believing that you should sign high school players With an occasional transfer, you should develop your players, and that's how you build a program. That's the way Nick Saban did it at Alabama. It's the way Urban Meyer did it at Florida over a shorter period of time. It's the way a lot of great coaches have done it. It's the way the game was played, the way programs were built, not teams year by year, but programs were built over time as freshmen became sophomores and sophomores became juniors and juniors became seniors. Sometimes they stayed for a fifth year. And then a new crop of players came in. They learned the system. They learned the culture. And programs were built. Now it's one team this year. It's a new team next year. It's a lot harder to build culture. Harder than it's ever been. And yes, Dabo and Clemson have not been as successful since NIL was approved in July of 2021. They have not been as successful since the transfer portal became a thing. That's provable. Those are facts. And I think people might be forgetting just how good Clemson was. Do you remember? Clemson went to 5 consecutive national championship games. Think about that. Nick Saban and Alabama never played in 5 consecutive national championship games. Clemson and Dabo Swinney did. 2015, they lost a close game to Alabama. 2016, they beat Alabama on the last offensive snap. 2017, oh, I'm sorry, they didn't go to the national championship game in 2017. They went to 4 out of 5. 2017, they lost to Alabama in the semifinals. 2018, they went back to the national championship game and spanked Alabama with Trevor Lawrence having a masterful game. In 2019, they went back to the national championship game and they got beat by Joe Burrow and LSU and that all-time great Bengal Tiger team. So 4 national championship games in 5 years. Only one coach has won more playoff games since the playoff began in 2014 than Dabo Swinney. That's Nick Saban. So Dabo has been at the top of the mountain for a long time. He sustained it. He built a program, and he sustained a program. I forget now how many years in a row they won 10 or more games. It's ridiculous. It was Saban-like. And he did it at Clemson, which did not have the same history and tradition that Alabama had when Nick Saban got there. And, of course, he enhanced it. But Dabo has earned the right to be one of the voices of college football. And you should listen when he talks. You should take to heart what he says. You should understand that when Dabo Swinney says, this is not just about a linebacker. And no offense to Luke Ferrelli, Dabo said this, look, I don't want anybody in my program that doesn't want to be in my program. So if he does not want to be at Clemson, he would rather be at Ole Miss, he should probably be at Ole Miss, but not the way it went down. Dabo made the point, this is about college football. What it is, where it's going, what it's going to be. And you may say, oh, that sounds good. That's very high-minded and highfalutin for a kid from Pelham, Alabama. But you got to understand something. You have to understand what college football has meant to Dabo Swinney. It has helped make him who he is. In some ways, college football helped save Dabo Swinney. There's a great story that he told. I want to say it was before the first Alabama-Clemson playoff matchup, the national championship game after the 2015 season. And this is absolutely true. You know, he was a walk-on at Alabama. Walk-on receiver. His family had been homeless for a time. He had a rough upbringing. Great mom that persevered through all kinds of adversity. So Dabo's taking classes at Alabama. He's a walk-on, so he's not getting scholarship money. And he does not know, I want to say this was the spring semester, so the winter, January of whatever year this we're discussing, and he wasn't sure how he was going to pay his tuition. And he got a solicitation in the mail, as all parents of college students are familiar with. You get these credit card offers. 0% interest for the first year. They don't put it, they put in very fine print what the interest is beyond the first year. They try to lure you in. They try to hook you to get your college student child to open up a credit card. And Dabo got one of those in the mail, and his credit limit was going to be $5,000. That was the exact amount of his tuition. So he got the credit card, maxed it out, took the money, paid his tuition. He was able to stay in school. This is not a fairy tale, okay? This is real life. This has been Dabo Swinney's real life. So when he talks about how much he wants to see college football be the best it can be and be successful and teach the lessons that it taught him and provide the opportunities that it provided him, he has standing to make those points and say those things. So my bottom line, I am inclined to side with Dabo Swinney on most topics. Not all, but most. So let's look at my bottom line. I wrote a column in the Birmingham News that appears in today's edition, Thursday, January 29th, 2026. Now, the Birmingham News, where I spent 33 years, spent my entire career up until 2018, and then I left to try some other things. It was a newspaper, of course, for years and years and years, for more than 100 years, one of the best newspapers in the South. Now it's an online subscription publication, and you can find links to my column through al.com. Brendan, let's look at the headline of the column that I wrote today. In a college football world full of Pete Goldings and Lane Kiffins, be a Dabo Swinney. I think you can pretty much guess which side of this issue I stand on. I stand on the side of Dabo. And I find it incredibly curious that 6 days have passed since Dabo Swinney essentially called Pete Golding a cheater. And in those 6 days, we have not heard a peep from Pete Golding, from Keith Carter, the Ole Miss athletic director, from anyone connected to Ole Miss, denying the allegations, pushing back against the allegations, firing back at Dabo Swinney, saying, your facts are not right. You don't have all the information you think you have. And someone close to the SEC suggested that to me earlier today, that maybe Dabo doesn't have the receipts that he thinks he has. This will all come out in the wash. But I don't know about you. But if someone called my character into question, if someone called me a cheater in my profession, and I had only been on the job in my current job for about, a month and a half? Since Pete Golding went from defensive coordinator at Ole Miss to interim head coach to full-time head coach because Lane Kiffin walked out on a team that was competing for a national championship heading to the playoff to go to LSU. And all the goodwill that Pete Golding accumulated throughout the college football playoff by winning and winning again and getting to the semifinals and saying the right thing along the way and watching his team battle and taking the lead in the last minute against Miami, and then watching Miami score the go-ahead and winning touchdown with about 18 seconds left. Pete Golding was one of the darlings of college football. He was viewed almost as an anti-Lane Kiffin because he didn't follow Lane Kiffin to LSU. He stayed at Ole Miss. He finished the job. He took that team as far as he could take them, and he almost took them to the national championship game. So all of that goodwill, all of the good vibes that were built up around Ole Miss football, incinerated in a 19-minute screed by Dabo Swinney a week ago. And in response, there has been no response from Ole Miss. I don't understand that. Maybe lawyers got involved. Perhaps they suggested no good can come of litigating this in the press or in public. that they will have their say when the NCAA comes calling. And the NCAA, according to The Athletic, is going to come calling if it hasn't already made that call. And let me say this. On a human level, I know Oxford, Mississippi, that entire part of the state has been devastated by winter weather. And we send out our thoughts and prayers to everybody who's been affected. I understand there are bigger things happening at Ole Miss on that campus in that town right now. However, everybody has one of these. Everybody can put out a statement through your athletic department, on Twitter, wherever you choose to make your statement. And the fact that Ole Miss hasn't said a word is frankly troubling. Frankly, makes me wonder why they haven't fired back. And while, as I said, I am inclined to side with Dabo Swinney on most college football issues, I am now doubling down on my belief that he does have those receipts, that he does have the facts on his side, that he has found perhaps the most egregious example of tampering that anyone has engaged in since tampering became a thing, thanks to NIL and the transfer portal. So if the NCAA is going to continue as a viable organization, it needs to do its job. It needs to investigate. It needs to get to the bottom of this. And if Dabo Swinney's allegations are true, it needs to penalize Ole Miss to the full extent of the law as the NCAA defines it. Otherwise, what are we even doing? Otherwise, the NCAA has no purpose going forward. Many people already think that's the case. This, along with the Charles Bediako case at Alabama, may be the NCAA's last stand. That's my last word on the subject. That's going to do it for us today on Scarbo Knows. I am Kevin Scarbinsky. Thank you for watching and listening. If you're watching on the Sidelines.live network, make sure you check out all the great shows on the network. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We appreciate it. We're growing. More and more of you are watching. We really, really thank you for that. Keep it up. Tell your friends. And thank you to our sponsor, Money Management Services, the Rice family, in business since 1992, right here in Birmingham, Alabama. They'll take great care of you. Let's hear from them now. The rest of you, have a great day. See you.
Since 1992, Money Management Services in Birmingham has provided individuals and business owners with trusted, fee-only financial advice. We're more than advisors, we're your financial family. From retirement planning to tax strategies and estate planning, our team builds personalized wealth management plans tailored to your life. At Money Management Services, we treat you like family, because when you walk through our doors, you become part of ours.